radio goes beyond having a lovely voice and putting on the mic. I do believe we've established this before in previous videos. You need to be able to put in the work and make radio fun. To do this, you must first understand your audience. Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Augustus. Let's talk about how to prepare for a radio show. So if you want to prepare for a radio show, the first thing I would do if I was going to prepare for a radio show would be to consider the radio format. So I work with Cool FM, a music radio station. I'll put that into consideration before I prepare for my radio show. So I wouldn't be making preparation for the show and planning to talk about things that concern politics or a lot of sports, because that would be what you would ascribe to a talk radio station. Instead, I'll do more focus on pop culture, put more focus on the relevance of hit music in my conversation and celebrity gossip in my conversation as well, seeing as I work with a music radio station. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to understand the radio format. You cannot overemphasize the importance of realizing the format of your radio station. Number two, something you also need to consider before you prepare for a radio show would obviously be the show itself. I'm assuming that if you're going to be on a radio show, you probably crafted the idea of the show, or you were brought in to continue after the show had been designed. What you need will be the synopsis of the show, a blueprint to guide you as to understand what you need to do, what you need to discuss, the conversations that need to be had whilst you are on air with your listener. So I think very important, you need to have a synopsis of the show that will serve as a blueprint for you and of course the listener. Next on the lineup is research. There's literally no way you can prepare for a show or plan a radio show without researching. If you're going to draft a plan to start up a radio show, your first radio program, you need to do your research. Once again, if you're working with a music radio station, for example, the conversation you want to have maybe concerns the Oscars, for example, because it happened the weekend before. You need to do your research. Who won Best Director? Christopher Nolan. Who won Best Actor? Cillian Murphy. Who won Best Costume? All of this research needs to be done, and you need to do all of this to make sure that you have ample information to share with your audience, and find a way to cramp it down a little bit so that you're not spending too much time talking, because another vital thing you need to consider is maximizing your time on the radio. Another thing you need to do, like I mentioned before, is the timing. You need to consider the timing of the show. So if, for example, if the show is 3 hours long, 4 hours long, in some cases 5 hours long, you need to make sure that every time you turn on the mic, you educate, you inform, and you entertain. Now, you also need to be able to make sure that when you cramp all of these rules into your speech or your prep, it must not seem as a lecture. It must not come off as though you're lecturing people, because of course that can get boring. So you need to find a way to give the best of information in a very entertaining way, the best of news in a very comical, entertaining way. And you do all of this, I guarantee you it's going to make for a very, very good show. But of course, it needs to be part of your show prep, and you need to put into consideration when you're prepping, no matter how long your show is, you need to make sure that you educate, you entertain, and you inform. One thing I actually do welcome is the idea of show prepping, which is obviously how you plan for a radio show. It's very key. It puts you, it gives you a guideline, it gives you a blueprint on what to say, how to say it, and when to say it, of course. But I think that most people, because it is now sort of like a duty or a ritual, they neglect to do thorough researching during their prep process. And so I think it is imperative and vital that there's a review of the prep. So for example, where I work, you don't necessarily just do your prep. You send your prep to your line manager, who most likely is the programs manager, who gets to vet the prep, make corrections if need be, and then resend to you before you use that prep on the radio. And I think it's also very key that most media organizations carry out review of the preps. It's not just to say, oh, you need to prep before you go on the radio. That's a given. You need to do your research before you go on the radio. But more importantly, you need to review the prep of the on-air personality or radio presenter before they go on radio. So if you're watching right now, we're talking about how to plan for a radio show. I also want to encourage you to please subscribe to this channel. Make sure to subscribe at Augustus Aigbe, Augustus Aigbe. Subscribe, tell your friends about it, share, watch, like, and of course, put on the notifications so as many times as possible when the videos drop, you get to see it firsthand, okay? Last but not the least, I think this is also very key. When you've done your prep, as you plan for your radio show, when you're done with your prep and your line manager, your programs manager has vetted your prep and has given a sign off, a thumbs up, and you want to now take that prep on air and be able to deliver a good show for your audience or listener, I think you also need to prepare for that prep. And this is what I mean, and this is what I do. When I'm done with my prep and I come on the radio, the first thing I do is to send the prep to myself via my email. I open it up on the system in the studio, and I make sure to write out 3 things that are key that I must adhere to be able to deliver that particular prep. It's not just to have a prep, but also to remember the 3 things that I need to put into consideration before I deliver that prep. So the first thing I usually do, and it's written on all my preps, is revise. So I may have been the one who drafted the prep. That's a given. In most cases, some people have show producers who draft their prep. That's fine. But you need to revise it. You can't just come on the radio and start reading out what you scripted. You need to revise it. The second thing I consider a rule to follow for the delivery or for the usage of the prep as you plan for a good show or a radio show is energy. Again, I think it also depends on the radio format or the station in question. So there are some stations that are a bit laid back. For example, some would say classic FM. I think they're a bit laid back. You may not necessarily need all of that energy. But if you work for a music radio station, if you work for a station like Cool FM, you do need the energy, especially depending on the belt that you're placed. So if you're on the road show, best believe you need to bring that energy. If you're on the morning show or the breakfast show, you need to bring that energy. Okay, so the first rule is revise. The second rule is energy. And the third rule for me is delivery. So you revise your prep, the prep you made to have a good radio show. You need to have energy to present that prep, especially as it depends on the belts that you're on. And then you need to deliver it the way you have scripted it. Sometimes you may have something in your head, and I'm a testament to that. You may have something in your head, especially something that might be comical or something that might be, interesting you want to share with your audience, but your delivery might get flawed. And so something that should naturally be very funny and should slap, when people get to hear it, it will go over their heads, or they probably will not get it the way you've delivered, because you need to put it at the back of your mind that this is radio. Your selling point is how you deliver it on the radio. So revise, energy, delivery. The third rule that I consider very, very important that you need to put into consideration before you have your prep used on radio. And I do believe strongly that these are the things you need to consider before you are able to plan for a radio show and obviously deliver a fantastic radio show on radio. Once again, I want to say subscribe to my YouTube channel. My name is Augustus Aigbe. Please tell your friends, share, like, subscribe, watch many of the videos as best as you can, and look out for the very next video. Keep in mind, all of this, I consider them skills to be able to harness your full potential when you plan for a radio show or a radio program. If you have this skill, then of course you can start to think about the other skills that you need to possess. All right. Anyways, my name is Augustus Aigbe. You can follow me on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, everywhere else at G Radio Rockstar. Okay, go follow. I'll follow right back. And please tell me when you follow that you saw me on my channel on YouTube. All right. The next time you see my face, we'll have something else to talk about as it concerns radio on this channel.